Hey everyone, we are back for another generic anime podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam. We also have.
I'm Edwin.
I'm Noah.
Hey y'all, it's Tea Leaf. My webcam isn't working today, so you just have to listen to my beautiful voice instead.
Yeah, I might do some funny stuff with that block in post and just put random pictures of you there. Oh,
Go for
you
it.
should do that to me. Send random pictures of yourself after. All right,
Sure.
today we're going to be talking about sports, anime, manga, light novels, and sports in general, I'm guessing. Our qualifications for doing sports. Edwin, why don't you start?
Qualifications. So, I am an ex-sports player, and I generally never watched any sports on TV. My first intro to sports manga was actually of tennis, which was on sale. And since then, I've read Air Gear, debatable, and I've watched Haikyuu, which is a volleyball anime.
Noah, what's your sports background?
I played tennis, ping pong, and ultimate frisbee in high school. I've watched a lot of the non-popular sports animes like Girls and Panzer, Walker Romance, and Want to Be the Strongest in the World.
Yeah, we'll get to Girls and
And
Panzer being a sports anime in a moment. For sports background, I played basketball in high school because I'm a tall man, and was also recruited to play in college as well. And as far as knowledge goes, I follow sports very avidly. If on the top of my shelf, if I don't feel like bringing it down, but I have a Zach Ertz signed football. And for those of you who know who that is, that means I am legit. And for those of you who don't, it means I'm legit. Also, I've watched several sports animes, obviously. I think I've watched all the big basketball ones and a few of the baseball ones. Tea-Leaf?
Sports ball? What's that? Do the thing, score the points, go team. All jokes aside, previous sports I've been involved in, tennis, badminton. I played some basketball and soccer in like middle school-ish, but that very quickly died. I am very much more into like the racket sports. If you can name it and it involves a racket, I've probably played it. Ping pong, badminton, tennis, squash, etc. But yeah, that's pretty much my sports experience. As for sports animes, I mean, you have all the mainstream ones: Haikyuu, Free, Yuri on Ice, the badminton one, Prince of Tennis, Hanebado, I think the badminton one is called. A couple others, but yeah, mostly all the mainstream ones. I tried watching the basketball ones; those were not great, in my opinion. Oh, also Yuri on Ice, if I have not mentioned, because fucking Yuri on Ice is glorious.
Yuri on Ice is a new sports anime. In all honesty, I actually agree with you on the basketball stuff. Was it? There's one good if you go way back, there's two good basketball animes in my opinion. Slam Dunk, because it's actually a somewhat realistic basketball anime. And Akira no Sora, I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that's also a good basketball anime. And all the ones that
was decent. The problem I have with most of the other random basketball animes is they try to make it too Western, if that makes sense. Like instead of, because like anime, there's this like whole thing with anime where it has to be based on like Japanese or Eastern like traditions, and sometimes when there's like this weird disconnect when I just suddenly see random like Western references in anime. I'm like, wait, that's not supposed to be there. That doesn't make sense in this context.
Well, it makes sense in the sports anime a little bit, but I was gonna say there is one basketball anime though that I hate, and I'm happy that you are kind of have a little bit of dislike of basketball. Have you guys heard of Kuroko no Basketball?
Oh God!
I think I may have heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, that's just so bad on so many
I'll put
levels.
it
I
this
don't
way:
even want to.
the abridged series was more. There was only 2 episodes of that, and it was more accurate to actual basketball than the actual series. It's general overview. Kuroko, he's the sixth man. He makes effort on the school. What is it? The story is like he was on a team of like the Generation of Miracles. And it was like they went undefeated in middle school, never lost a single game. And in the back of my head, I'm like, that's common. Like
I say this is middle school.
I can't say
yeah,
I
it's
ever watched
middle
the
school. If you can play somewhat competently, you're gonna go undefeated, unless you're coming straight up from Baltimore or DC, where basketball's super competitive. Not to throw shade at other cities, but I'm a Maryland resident, so Baltimore basketball for life. They are the best city. But Baltimore, it's not like they are
Like
a
in middle
Baltimore
school.
middle school. There's gonna be plenty of undefeated teams, and so that was the first thing. They treated like that was a special thing. And there was even a thing where it's like, two players can never go against each other, otherwise it like destroys their bodies. It's like that's not how that works either. And the other thing,
I mean,
To be fair, they might be thinking of like Japanese middle school, which is a bit different from our middle school.
maybe, but it's like the disconnect. I guess it's a little bit of maybe the Western culture that Taylor brought. The disconnect is there because it's like being undefeated in middle school is not a big deal. That all these players will be. You get the point. Even the manager of the team was sought after and other shit like that. But the other thing that got me is Edwin, you've played sports. Noah, you've played sports. Tea Leaf, you've kind of played.
I played basketball in middle school.
If you can count what I do as playing sports, yes.
You're aware of what being in the zone means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it just means like you're on point. It's not a superpower, right? It's not like that's what bugs me the most about Crocodile basketball. They treat the zone as if it's like this special superpower that only a select number of players have the ability to access. Like it's one of those, the only way we can possibly come back in this game is if I enter the zone. And if I can't enter the zone, we're gonna lose this game. It's like, that's not how the zone works. You don't just be like, I gotta enter the zone, and then it's like, so this is the power of entering the zone. It's not Ultra Instinct. And that's how they treat it, to the point where even like one of the big championship teams sort of towards the end, their captain has the ability to bring his whole team into the zone. It's like, that's not how the zone works.
Sam. Here's the thing, though. That's not exclusive to that anime, because if we take Haikyuu, which is probably one of the single most beloved sports animes of all fucking time, for very good reason, every single character in that show just also has random points where they just suddenly develop super special magic powers or some special ability that only they can use on the court. And it's fucking ridiculous, but at the same time, that's why it's an anime. They're allowed to dramatize things like that. Or even Prince of Tennis. Like, half of the things that the people try to do in Prince of Tennis is not only, like, impossible in
unrealistic
tennis, but it's impossible according to conventional physics. Because there's no way you could actually get a ball to bounce backwards with the way that the anime depicts them swinging their racket.
I'm okay with the sort of unconventional physics normally in sports anime. What rubbed me the wrong way about Kuroko no Basketball is, unlike a few other of those things, it felt like they used it as a crutch too much for the dramatic tension.
I'm with you in that Kuroko no Basketball.
It didn't need it to be there because there was no other thing in the anime that really was like, oh, it's a superpower thing. The problem is for the rest of it, they tried to be super serious, like, this is an extremely realistic thing. Right at the beginning, it was very realistic, where it's one of those, Kuroko's big thing was, it's one of those, they couldn't tell where he was sending the pass. It was like, oh no, he's doing misdirection. Like, he looks them off with his eyes. He turns his hips a subtle way. That's an actual basketball thing, and that felt like the direction they were going to go. And then just out of a left field turn, they started, even with the guy who was like, he mimicked other people's styles. That's actually a thing that people do. Like Ron Artest was a great defender because he was able to pick up on the way other people played. He didn't then copy that ability and did that exactly, but he was able to pick up on their style, and that's what made him a great defender. That's a realistic element. They had all these realistic elements, and then out of nowhere they start introducing the zone. A dude who nails half-court three-pointers, or can even, I think he almost even, I can't remember correctly, I think he might have even shot a full-court three-pointer. But it's like, once you start having, yes, this character can casually score half-point threes, I'm like, okay, you just took me out of the realm you've built me. You now have this player who is like, what's the point of any of the other guys on his team? You have a guy who can consistently nail three-pointers from behind half-court. Steph Curry can't even do that. And he's the best. Well, actually, no. Let me rewind that. Only Steph Curry can do that. And that guy is not Steph Curry.
Speaking of this trend of superpowers, might we want to discuss?
I'm with you, Sam. I'm with you in that Kuroko no Basketball sucks, but I don't think the dramatization of the zone is the major contributor to that. I think a lot more of it has to do with, as you said, the realism, but also I felt like the character development and the pacing was completely off for what they were trying to do with the show.
Yeah, also that it's one of those, it felt like they never faced any actual challenges too. Like to the point where actually moving on to that's my
I was
problem
going to
with
say
sports animes, all the tropes that feels every sports anime follows, to the point where this now leads into a potential debate. I'm not sure if Noah's opinion has changed since we last spoke, but Tea Leaf, actually, have you seen Girls und Panzer?
I've heard of it, but I have not actually watched it through.
Noah, do you want to tell everyone what Girls und Panzer is?
Basically, it's an anime about girls in a high school that basically use a tank, and they're calling it, and they battle each other with like fake missiles and stuff, and they kind of just call it, and it's like a whole competition. And
yeah, it's called Tankery.
And me and Sam have a little debate about whether or not that's a sport.
It's a sports anime.
I
know, Tea Leaf, you talked about like in the previous thing where it's like if a thing follows the tropes, that doesn't mean it's that kind of anime. But hear me out, and I will describe the plot of a show, and you tell me whether you think it's a sports anime or not, okay?
Let me clarify.
Let's say, Tea Leaf, you got to get closer to the mic, friend.
Very, very closely follows the tropes for that category, does not necessarily make it of that category. It can be, but you have to look beyond the tropes to make that determination.
Yeah, that's what I know. It's one of those, but the tropes currently, I'm using this to reinforce my argument because I'll describe an anime to you, and you tell me what kind of anime you think that is. New character joins school. They're looking for a club to join. They're dragged into this new club and they're able to pick up, that was kind of a hobby, but the school's really proud of it, and turns out this girl is actually not half bad at this new hobby, bonds with her teammates in the club, and they then partake in a competition against a high-level school at this club, and they get so close to defeating them, but at the very end, they get defeated by a kind of fluke thing where it's like, they could have won if not for that one thing. So then they rebound and go to a tournament where it's like, okay, in this tournament now, we're going to get our rematch against them, but oh no, that team's been knocked off by other team from out of nowhere. Who could have seen this coming, that the powerhouse was taken out? Now this new team has to face the powerhouse team. What kind of anime does that sound like to you?
Slice of life.
No. It's a sports anime.
Honestly,
this is what got me is I haven't seen all of Girls und Panzer. I stopped after 4 episodes. My brother wanted to let me watch the whole thing. And after 4 episodes, I then reiterated to him exactly what I said there. When I was like, aren't you excited to see if they can fight the team? I'm like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a tournament, and then they're gonna get knocked off by some other school from out of nowhere, and it's gonna be a big shock. Basically, I know the whole plot before the plot was going to happen because I've seen a sports anime before, and I just followed the sports anime tropes and knew the plot of this Girls in Panzer because it's a sports anime.
Well, speaking of tropes, can we discuss like its origins as like a shonen type of story? Like
Oh yeah,
originally it became really popular as like shonen manga until Dragon Ball Z came along and made it about different kind of sets. But before that, it was all about the sports anime. I believe Slam Dunk was like in that period with really popular sports manga and authors, and I think a lot of tropes might have came from that sort of period and their development and trying to match Dragon Ball afterward.
yeah, I can see that in a lot of sports anime. Specifically, like they said, it's the sort of thing where it's one of those they meet a rival, and this could probably be used to describe a lot of shonen anime. You meet an enemy that absolutely schools them, and then they get their revenge on the enemy after they've practiced, and now they're better. Like the prime example is in a sports anime where they play up against a team in a practice match, and they lose, but then they are going to get a rematch against them in actuality or like I said in the Girls in Panzer thing, the team gets taken out by a surprise contender. And then they get the rematch because it's one of those, we want to show their growth throughout this thing. We want to show that they got better. Which, if you want to do that in a sports anime at least, I think it's fine for shonen. The thing that I have with sports is that makes it very predictable. To the point, if you can guess the
I
plot
think
of what's
that's
going
an
to happen
issue.
next, that's actually why I loved Akira no Sora, because it actually grabbed a team of ragtag people, and it's one of those, a lot of them kind of like played basketball, and two of them played basketball in middle school. They also grabbed a group with 3 guys who didn't even play basketball. Sora, who had been playing it for a while, but he was super short. You have freaking tall, lanky guy as the center, but he doesn't have a lot of stamina. Then you have Kite, who's like LeBron James, only he's Asian. And you put all these characters together, and they have a 7-man rotation. 7 or 8-man rotation. I can't remember. I thought it's like 7 or 8. It's 8 people.
I mean, I
8-man rotation. But what I liked here was they never really won any of their games in the first episode. In fact, the whole big thing of the last game they played, of the final part of the first season, I think, or it was the final part of the first season or final part of season 2. Basically, they got their asses handed to them by a team's backup unit. But the whole point of it was for them to try to get a coach who was willing to help them learn, because they were still rookies, and it was even said by a lot of the people watching them with, well, what do you expect? They've only really been a team for 3 months. Of course they're not going to qualify in a preliminary match to go to nationals. Of course they're not going. It's one of those, because yes, you can practice a lot for 3 months, but you can't do that and then go up against guys who've been playing for years and beat them, which if it was another sports anime, Kuroko basketball, they would have just won the match through some bullshit superpower thing at the last minute. That they did. It's like they would have entered the zone, won the match, and be like, now they're qualified. Oh, this is gonna be great. They're gonna face off against the team that beat them before. No, they didn't get that story. They got their asses handed to them in the first round and never even made it that far. Actually, it wasn't even the first round. It was the preliminaries. And then they faced off against another school, which was top tier, to try to make sure their club could come back because story stuff.
And you also need
to
got
destroyed by them. They held up with them for a while, but they ended up losing like 50 or so points.
Sam, if you want people to actually watch the show, you need to stop giving out spoilers.
Probably.
That depends. Sometimes it's tantalizing enough,
Maybe he doesn't want them to watch the show because he says it's so bad.
Regardless, I think that's part of the reason why I liked Yuri on Ice so much, beyond the fact that it is gay as fuck and I'm also gay as fuck. Yuri on Ice had such a focus on the realism of portraying the sport of figure skating, and also the fact that it really focused more on the character development and used the sport only to show progression of the various character arcs. Like, beyond the fact that it's an ice skating anime, you really don't get the sense because the vast majority of the anime itself just focuses on character arcs and getting Yuri through his depression, getting Victor more engaged with the real world, helping Yurio overcome his anger management, whatever. Like, the entire anime is more about character development and the realism of what if these people were actually real rather than the sport itself, which is why I think Yuri on Ice is probably my favorite like sports anime of all time. But like, yeah, that's a this again ties back into why I don't like using tropes to define categories, because Yuri on Ice doesn't really follow any of the sports anime tropes. Like, if you're looking for tropes, most of them aren't going to be there, but it is still a sports anime by definition because it involves sports and it's an anime and it's great and I fucking love it because of that.
Actually,
I'd imagine as a more realistic take on an anime, if you focused more on the sports aspect, it would be a lot more boring. So they probably made the right call when they were focusing more on the character part. So,
which that's what you can do the sports show for. Or sports anime for. And that's what I agree with Tealeaf there is. This is just me. I watch a sports anime because I want to actually kind of see the elements of realism. If I want to see this sort of supernatural thing, I won't be watching a sports anime in the first place. Which I know you guys might bring up Haiku, and I haven't ever seen the show before. So
I've seen some of it.
Give me the hate now. I'll take it in for a moment.
Haikyuu has enough realism in it for people who want to watch it for the story arcs.
It does have some shonen superpowers already, I'm seeing. So,
yeah,
like shonen style.
What you just said, though, Sam, is one of the reasons why I can never get over Keijo and why it's such a stupid anime, in my opinion. Yes, Keijo? I recognize that it's supposed to be a parody, but Keijo, yes, that show where like girls are on fucking floating platforms and try to hit each other.
Oh, was that the one where they use their bodies?
Like, yes, that is technically
I heard about that one.
No, I happen to dislike it a lot because it fucking doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no such thing as magical boob powers. That's not a thing. Like, I'm watching sports,
so I can't actually give an agreement. Or
I'm watching sports because I want to watch things like Prince of Tennis or Yuri on Ice or even Free, where there aren't these magical workarounds or things where they literally focus on like sport and the story around the sport.
Yeah, and that's I think that's why I think is when sports anime are at their best is when it's one of those. It's not necessarily focusing on the sport, but using the sport as a vehicle to help characters develop, help characters progress. Which is, in all honesty, that's why I love Slam Dunk. Which I'll be a little bit more careful with spoilers now, but I'll only say what like you'll find out in the first episode. You take a guy who's a pure amateur and is only doing basketball to impress a girl, and he slowly comes to genuinely love the sport instead. And it's one of those. He used to be he was kind of a selfish. Oh, I'm doing this so I can look good, and he slowly becomes a little bit of a humble dude. He's still a little bit. He's still a little bit brash, but it's one of those. He actually develops character as well. Hanamichi is a great character. Slam Dunk is actually a big enough thing that if you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. When it was being published and released, a lot of people in Japan quoted it as being a reason why they started playing basketball, was because of that anime. Which it's one of those superpowers, they just focused on the realism and the development of the characters, and it made sense why they were a good school too, because it's like they have two seniors who are graduating. And they actually made the finals. They actually like made I think they made like the quarterfinals or like pretty far in their first year because they had an amazing captain who carried them. They had a great player, and now they have a supporting cast. So who knows how far they'll go? It's a little bit more realistic and intrigue.
Just
But there
say
was
your
also that, like,
description
it's one of those.
of
They're
the
still a
anime.
little bit of an underdog team, but it's like it's not. They're more of a wild card team, like the dark horse. They're not a 16 seed. They're like a 7 or 6 seed, where you don't expect them to win a whole tournament, but they might.
I'll just say your description of the main guy kind of sounds like the main guy from Horton Hears I mean, not Horton Hears Who, but the Lorax movie, the new Lorax movie.
How do we get to?
I'm not going to go into that, but I will go into, have any of you guys read or seen Air Gear?
No, what's Air Gear?
So Air Gear is actually an interesting thing. So what T Leaf was mentioning before was kind of a fictional sport that couldn't exist due to certain physics in the real world. But in this one, it's kind of similar, but it's with a certain kind of rollerblades, because these rollerblades are a lot more specialized. They're made so you can, do a lot of tricks and parkour, but you can actually scale buildings with them and reach some major airtime with different air gear. And so the whole thing's about specialization of the air gear and reaching your full potential with it. And it's a really interesting anime. I think it counts as a sports anime because it focuses on the sport, but also how the sport develops the individual characters. It's surprisingly violent. There's a lot of street gangs in the thing, but it's a really interesting sports anime now, I guess, because now it's got like a season 2 coming out soon. But I preferred the manga.
That's something.
I guess I can show you what it looks.
Before,
I guess I can. Yeah.
The manga. That for some reason a lot of sports anime also feel the need to have a lot. It's at least something I've noticed. That I would say it's at least a trope. There are a lot of gangs in sports anime.
What do you mean?
Right when you said that, I immediately remembered in Slam Dunk there was 100% a gang by like the 5th or 6th volume, even sooner.
I mean, I don't think
And
that's
even in Sora, it's like the first 4 members of the team were in a gang too. They're the delinquents.
See, I don't think that's necessarily part of sports anime. I think that's just a trope that's found in most animes that have high school students, that somehow the main character gets themselves involved with various kinds of thugs. I feel like that's more part of the high school anime trope rather than the sports anime trope, though.
That's a valid point.
I agree with that.
And yes, high school anime
So Exorcist doesn't have this
category of anime or genre of anime. It fits more in with slice of life, but sports anime is part of the.
Imagine it bleeds in.
Slice of life / high school / whatever.
Okay, now this is doing a little bit of a topic shift because now I'm curious. What anime or what sport do you want to see turned into an anime just to see how they would do it?
Quidditch.
Dodgeball not an anime already?
Is that? I feel so. You would want Average Joe the anime? There's a.
I'm just saying, like, I know Dodgeball and Underdog Story is actually pretty hilarious.
I would find it very amusing if an anime production company managed to turn American football into an anime that would make sense in the Japanese context of anime itself. Because I feel like that would be absolutely fucking hilarious.
There was.
Did they do something already?
I know it at least exists. iShield 21. I never read it, but I saw. Back when I was little, it was like popped up in my Shonen Jump, so I knew a few things. I'm not sure if there were superpowers in there or not because I just read the descriptions and it was like it had like their signature move, like Mount Everest Pass or Tidal Crash, or I am the best. I'm not sure if there were powers in there or not, or if that was just like the thing they did. But if there is an actual American football thing that could make sense, if they wanted to do that, I would say just have a Japanese student transfer to America and join the football team over there.
That would take them actually wanting to understand another culture, and they don't really like that.
Ooh, Edwin throwing throwing
That's
shade.
almost- Mount Everest Pass is almost as cheesy as the stupid moves in those old kung fu movies I used to watch.
You don't want to catch a Mount Everest pass from the quarterback?
When you say that, I can only
Well,
think
it's not
Detroit
fucking-
Smash. Detroit Smash. United States of Smash. Good stuff.
Oh, you know what's actually funny? There are confirmed a lot of anime watchers in football now. It's invaded in other areas.
Because a lot of black people like watching anime.
Freaking what's it called? Is there a lacrosse anime yet?
I should look that up.
I feel like there is. I don't remember
Bowling
what it was.
anime, dude, a bowling anime. But instead of bowling against pins, you put each other on the other sides. It's like extreme bowling, and you throw the bowling balls at each other and try to knock each other down.
It'd be like dodgeball, though, Sam.
I mean, that's
I still think we
dodgeball
should
right
make
there,
the
Sam.
dodgeball
Yeah,
anime
so
first.
You combine dodgeball and
And Edwin, there is actually an anime about dodgeball.
I'd imagine it's dodgeball. Why wouldn't they make an anime of it?
Dude, actually, now I want a dodgeball anime because I didn't realize I accidentally invented dodgeball.
Sam, there is one. It's called Hano no Tokyuji Dodge Dampe.
Oh, how good is it?
How good is it, Noah?
'Cause I've never
I
heard of
don't know.
For the look,
It's like a
we know what we're
1990
gonna be watching next time. We know what we're watching at our next time.
Its original run was in 1999, so that can be.
Oh no! What is this?
Also,
Okay, I'm looking at this and I'm hating the art style. This is the one he's talking about. Some people like different art styles. I'm kind of on the fence about Haikyuu's art style right now, but not liking what I'm seeing so far in this art style.
Actually, now T-Leaf, this is something I wanted to ask you. What do you think of? Because it's one of those. I'm gonna say this. You're a connoisseur of. Would you say you're a connoisseur of Yuri and Yaoi anime?
I would say I know a fair bit about the genre. I wouldn't say I know everything about it. But...
Yeah, I wish this is where I wish we had Haley, because she's much better at this than us. But this is actually something I've noticed how.
Yes, I do have some knowledge of it, but I also lean more towards the gay side, so I know more about yaoi than I would about
That's
Yuri.
fine with me, because this was actually going to be the next question.
Yuri would be
how
more
a
of
lot of some sports animes feel the need to include the yaoi element, and I was kind of curious on everyone's take on that, because as I say, I haven't watched as many sports animes outside of the sports I like. Like, you're not going to catch me watching an anime about swimming. Sorry, Free.
Okay. Here's the thing, though. There is this trope in sports anime, especially on the men's sports side.
Yes.
If you are watching a sports anime and it has exclamation points in the name, you know it's going to be at least a little bit gay. The more exclamation points a sports anime has, the more gay it's going to be.
T-Leaf, I'm going to need some evidence for you to back this up, because if that is true, then you have a code that has been cracked that I am very curious about.
I mean, this is more of a trope and joke in the fandom itself rather than hard fact. But if you look at Free, it's already pretty gay to have this fucking anime where, 12 guys are, basically half naked the entire fucking time and are, randomly hugging each other and trying to have bonds with each other over this sport while they're being half naked. That's a little gay. Right.
What if I have never seen this anime and I feel like I've been missing out on something hilarious?
You should watch it.
We're talking about the sumo one.
Clear.
No, Free is the swimming one.
There's very clear subtext that's never made explicit about how fucking gay it is, and it's fucking hilarious. It's become such an inside joke.
Wait, is that how Japanese? Is that how the anime industry thinks it's like in? Locker rooms?
This is just what people have extrapolated from what's there from the subtext. The next example that we'll look at is Haikyuu.
I'm about to say I'm getting some vibes there.
And even if we just look at like the two main characters there, Hinata and Tobio, like there's a clear draw between them, and it's basically the entire story is how they become literal best friends and like can't be on the court without each other or whatever the fuck it is. And it's fucking hilarious. And then you have like all the other side characters that are also pairing up and making like best friend and bonds and whatever else it is, and their relationships with each other, and it's just fucking hilarious.
So wait.
I was about to question that. Yeah.
But this, we'll call it this rule. Does that mean that Keijo is the most gay anime out there? That thing's got like 7 exclamation points.
I mean, yes, they're literally like using their boobs.
Dude, they're bashing
and their
butts
asses
against
to, like,
each other.
bash each other. Like, if that's not softcore, you're like, if
That's
that's
just
not
softcore porn at that point.
If that's not softcore lesbian porn,
Oh, the sport, you see.
But also, moving on to my third point, Yuri on Ice has 3 exclamation points in the title. And as we all know, that is the most gay of all the sports anime, considering the two main characters literally like get together and fucking kiss in the middle of the ice rink in like, what was it, episode 7 or 8, something like that. Like, it's so fucking gay. And you know, like the first fucking ad, Victor fucking Nikiforov standing up naked in a hot pool in like one of those like heated spring pool things, being like, "Yo, I'm gonna be your coach for the next season," and Yuri's like, "Yo, what the fuck?"
I feel like I need to watch more.
See, in the West,
now. There's a.
It's fucking
I haven't.
hilarious.
I'll put it this way. Hey, I've seen the anime of sports that I personally played, which is still weird that I haven't watched Haikyuu yet. I play a little volleyball for fun because it's actually a fun sport. If you don't play volleyball and you're still a weeb, play volleyball. It's fun once you learn how to play it.
Sam. But the thing about the animes that you watch though is there were no exclamation points in the title, thus they weren't gay.
I feel like in terms of Western, I feel like in terms of like sports anime in general, like, or in sports in general, like any sports story, if it's a team sport, there's going to possibly be the subtext of, you know, some kind of homosexuality. I feel like I think even Westerners pick up on that, which is why in a lot of them they have aggressively no homo scenes in the sports, you know, shows and series.
Yeah, but
just so
it's like an established thing in Japan. Like they don't fucking give a fuck. Like they'll just
Sam
do
is not
whatever.
qualified to speak on this subject, so.
That's why like hentai is an entire fucking industry in Japan. You don't see the same kind of like thing that people have here for like cartoon porn, but like hentai is an entire industry in Japan.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
All right then. Moving on to the next part, or actually no, it's was I don't want to drill the there. Actually, yeah. Moving on to the next point, we've covered the bit of realism in sports animes, but there have also been the vague. It was I want to move on to a sort of vague definition of sports anime. And something that you might because I want to kind of backpedal to the Girls and Panzer thing, because who here has seen Chivalry of a Failed Knight?
Nope.
Yep, I've seen it.
Okay, then this is going to be done. Hey, Noah, would you count that as technically a sports anime? Since the whole anime revolves around mainly a tournament arc, and it's kind of like, if you think about it like really hard, it's just future UFC.
I don't count it as a sports anime.
Oh, come on, it's in the future UFC.
People have swords.
It's in the future UFC that predominantly revolves around the tournament. At least that arc specifically kind of makes it.
Here's the thing about sports anime. Like, my definition for sports anime is one, obviously, it has to involve some kind of sport, whether real, imagined, futuristic, whatever. And then the second point about that, which is not necessary but enhances the sports anime feel of an anime, is that it has to involve some kind of team sport. And Yuri on Ice here is the exception for me.
So wait, would you say? Wait, I'm gonna cut you off. Would you say Hikaru no Go then isn't a sport anime?
Oh, what's that one? I don't think I've watched it.
It's a story about a guy who finds a ghost in a haunted Go board, and he starts playing the game of Go.
I would
count Beyblade then as the sports anime.
It's a board game, but a lot of people consider chess a sport too.
Chess is not a sport.
It's not a team sport. It can, and it sometimes does have actually no, it has elements of team play in it too, because there is 3-on-3 tournaments.
Not counting Pokemon.
Their lead. Okay, here's the thing though: chess.
Not counting Pokemon, and we're not counting Beyblade.
Like Beyblade is not a real sport.
It's still a sport anime.
I'm not going to count that. Pokemon and Beyblade are not anime.
Okay.
I'm not counting those two.
That both Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon are also sports anime.
Yes, you are correct.
I'm about to say, Sam is about to argue this point.
Is a sport. I flex my wrist muscles when I play, man.
Which is not how those are defined.
Well, it's one of those, I would say, a sport. How do you define a sport then? We should have done this at the beginning of how we define a sport. How do you define a sport then, T-Leaf?
There are arbitrary rules in Pokemon.
You can't say something's not a sport if you don't have a definition of what a sport is.
I think, Sam, there may be sports in Pokemon, but Pokemon is not exactly sports in its universe. It's
an activity involving a physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment.
More specifically, the individual we're focusing on and not just the big team. Also, they also have to have arbitrary rules to the sport specifically. Pokemon doesn't have arbitrary rules.
It is not in and of itself a sports anime.
It has parts of it does.
Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, and all of these other things all...
Well, Digimon's actually not a sport anime.
That's an isekai.
I'm saying
it's an isekai, and it's not done in a competitive setting. That is not a sports anime. Pokemon, you go into a league, like the National Football League or the National Basketball Association. You enter a league, you compete against other trainers to earn badges, and at the end of it, the trainers who qualified enter a tournament. It is not a sport definition in the traditional sense, but the sport... Whose thing is that?
Not mine.
Okay, I'm gonna...
If I can finish my thought,
yeah, sure.
I would classify Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, Beyblade, etc. under its own category of not quite game anime. No, here's the word I'm looking for: franchise anime. They're more
it's a franchise
that were developed and created and put into production to get popularity or recognition from the more general public about a particular franchise.
It could still be a sports anime despite that.
I would say that even more.
I'll give you that Yu-Gi-Oh is not one. I'll give you that.
I would say it is more. I would say that while Pokemon does include aspects of sports, it is not in its own a sports anime.
I couldn't hear you there. Noah's mic was being weird.
I would not say that Pokemon is in and of itself a sports anime. I would say that it is more focused on the franchise, and that's seen throughout the entire anime because you don't really see any focus given to actually showing the Pokemon battles or the league or whatever as an actual sport. It's more focused on them exploring the new regions, getting the lore of the regions out, like exploring facets of the game that to make it more quote unquote realistic. Like it's more focused on
may I make a
franchise rather than it is and on it's more focused on promoting the franchise rather than on focusing on Pokemon as a sport.
May I make a counterpoint to that?
I mean, go for it.
What would you?
If I can make a counterpoint,
would you say that the Pokemon VGC is an e-sport?
VGC?
Video Game Championship. Would you say that as an e-sport, not a normal sport, an e-sport like League of Legends or Dota?
I mean, I also don't really.
I don't think so, because it's a number.
I've never played VGC, and I don't know much about it, so I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other.
There's competition.
I would say
there's leagues,
I don't.
There's all the other things that make it a sport, the exception of the physical activity that many people attribute to something needing to be a sport. I disagree on that point. That's why I say chess is a sport.
To say I think it would be on the same level as chess if that were the case, and I don't think chess is a sport. Much
so
less.
then that stands to reason if Pokemon was real and not in an electronic environment, it would be a sport. Just
if
how like dog
fighting's not a sport, Sam.
Dog shows are actually a sport, so I'll back that on that. But it'll be like a real thing because you take a trainer and a Pokemon competing against another trainer and a Pokemon in a competitive setting in front of an audience, and there's team aspects as well. There's double battles and triple battles. I say that even if it's not the main focus all the time, it's one of those, it's not always the main focus, similar to how in some sports anime, the sport will not even show up. Like, it's the beach training episode, where it's more of just an excuse to send the characters to a beach, or slice of life episodes. Those exist in sports animes too. And in Pokemon, they're just more abundant. It just doesn't always focus on the sport, but that doesn't mean it's not a sports anime.
Sam, I would say cockfighting is not a sport.
Cockfighting is not a sport, it's illegal.
That's what Pokemon is, basically, except you have a team of your roosters fighting other roosters.
Waving aside the legality.
That's a cruel tactic to play, because if I say you're a fraud,
waving aside the legality.
It's an illegal sport. Cockfighting's an illegal sport. That's why it's illegal. But Pokemon's a legal sport.
It's legal cockfighting.
It's an illegal sport. It's bad.
Waving aside the ethics of forcing sentient creatures to battle each other until near death, Pokemon,
near fainting,
in my opinion, does not count as a sports anime because it is more focused and mostly focused on promoting a franchise for monetary gain.
Agree to disagree. We're not gonna change each other's minds.
Also, on what point Air Gear is
Pokemon the only reason Pokemon as an anime exists is to promote the games, promote the books, promote the freaking stuffed animals and toys and whatever else that Nintendo and Game Freak are creating. Like, it does not exist for itself. It exists as a promotional object to gain recognition. Like, by definition.
Technically, by that definition, that's what all animes are, with the exception of original works, because the primary reason anime is made is to sell more manga, or whatever it's called.
I mean, not really.
Or the light novel. So technically, by your definition, everything's a promotional thing, and I will leave it on that.
I mean, no, because Pokemon clearly has a franchise around it that was built before the anime was created. Like, most manga don't become franchises until after the anime is released.
Also, Sam, on your point of like an illegal sport technique,
from being a manga to becoming an anime to getting the book deals or the toy deals or the merchandise deals because the anime was so popular. Like there's a natural
We're
progression
getting off
as
topic a little, T-Leaf.
the franchise
Pull back.
I'm about to say,
anime becomes popular, and that is the difference. That is the difference.
my argument. Yeah, sorry, dude. My argument with Sam earlier on illegal. Technically, in Air Gear, the whole actual sport is technically an underground thing, since part of the thing is that it's kind of illegal on the surface, so they all have to do a bunch of underground tournaments, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. Which is
So now
why,
American was
but the whole point,
at some point. All right, then.
yeah, the whole point of the thing is that it's underground. As an Air
Let's kind of
Gear
end
where
it
the
on this
people
point,
fly.
then. We've been going at it for a little bit. Let's kind of end it here.
Yeah, some kind of passion for this.
Yeah, a few of I'll admit I got a little passionate on some points more than others. T-Leaf, I think you did too at some point. I did think it'd be the sports anime that drove us to this one.
I didn't let Noah talk a lot either. Noah.
Sorry,
Okay.
Noah. You did say you did know a lot about sports stuff.
And I've watched less sports stuff and end up talking more.
Yeah, I'll admit this was me and T-Leaf predominantly. All right then.
I mean, yeah.
And all right then, we'll call it here then, since we've gotten very close to the mark, and we will
Final
see
thoughts,
how...
everyone. Final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. I like that.
And we should do final thoughts. I'm about to say.
Have
Oh,
you-
should I go first, or should you?
No, you start. You brought it up.
Final thoughts. Let's say I brought it up. Sports anime at this point is just okay with me. Like, I really like Air Gear. I'm kind of indifferent to Prince of Tennis and Haikyuu at this point. There's a lot of homosexual subtext to all around, I feel, and I think that's common with team animes or team anything. But it's all really interesting to me, and I'm still going to continue Haikyuu after this just to see what happens next.
Noah.
Okay. Even with this discussion, I think sports anime is definitely one of my least favorites of the genres of anime.
Boo.
Understandable.
Although technically, according to Sam, most of anime is a sports anime with his definition.
If you think hard enough, if you think some is like
If you stretch it
10%
far
sport
enough.
anime, some's 90% sport anime.
Sam, if I have to do
If you
mental
stretch it
gymnastics to fit an anime into a category, it does not belong in that category.
Is mental gymnastics a sport?
No. Just like chess is a sport.
Only if you make it official.
My final thoughts is that when a sports anime is done well, then you get, I think, classics like Slam Dunk. I haven't seen Haiku, but it seems like that's a classic right now. And when it's kind of done poorly, where they don't really stay true to the realism, you get stuff like Crocodile Basketball, which I think it's still popular for some reason. For some reason, it's popular. I have no idea what that reason could be, but it's popular. But you get it's animes I feel like are subpar, at least to sports fans. It doesn't feel very good. But when it's done well, I think it can appeal to everyone. Do you leave?
Yeah. So, I have to agree with Sam on this. I like the sports animes that focus more on the realism of it. So realistic sports, portraying actual sports without like weird supernatural magic. So things like Prince of Tennis, Haikyuu, Free, Yuri on Ice, Akira no Sora, like those kinds of animes make it feel relatable. Like you could be one of those players, and watching like this group of people bond and overcome their obstacles and grow in character just makes it feel a lot more relatable. Like you can actually, be part of this or be in that group, or, even if you do play a sport, maybe extend those kinds of relationships to your fellow teammates or whatever. Those are the kind of sports animes I like that focus on the realism, the character development, the overcoming of the obstacles rather than the sport itself. Because honestly, if I wanted to watch tennis, I would just turn on the TV when Wimbledon or the U.S. Open or whatever is on. Like,
I get Serena Williams.
Like, yeah, if I wanted to watch sports, I would go watch the Olympics or whatever. Like, I'm here for a story. I want the story to be well fleshed out, but it also needs to have aspects of realism to it. Give me that, like, character development. That's probably, like, my favorite thing about sports animes is the character development, because the way that works, like, it's actually possible to have those kind of character development in the real world, unlike, say, Sword Art Online, where you have to have, like, this whole fantasy thing where you get trapped in a video game and almost die, blah, 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 to have that kind of character development. Like, this is realistic. This is something that could happen, that would happen, and might actually happen.
All right.
So,
all right, and with Keely's final thoughts, that's it for podcast number 4. Because no, 4, because we reverted to the OVA. This is podcast number 4. You guys missed 3. All right.
You kicked me out of that one, Sam. I was willing to go.
I didn't kick you out of it. You just came off of wisdom teeth surgery. You were in pain talking. Don't pull that one.
I wasn't in pain talking. I was just sleepy. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding with you.
We wanted to put a pain drugged up Edwin on screen. Good call.
I think that would have gotten more viewers.
Probably. All right. We'll see y'all next time for podcast number 5. Wait, goodbye, guys. Bye.
Yeah. Sayonara. Imagine Tea Leaf is waving.